We were learning the mitzvah of Avos Hashem in Derech Mitzvah, and the basic idea which came forth was that the mitzvah is not the emotion of the love, but rather to do what it takes to develop these emotions, specifically by learning, thinking, contemplating about the essence of what does God mean and your relationship with it. Lashon of the Rambam is basically your mitavet tava gdola leida et Hashem hagadol. You can develop an obsessive desire of knowledge to want to know God. The Lashon of the Rambam and Hilchos Tshuva was davar yadua, is quite known. She'ein avat Hashem kshura b'leva adam. The love of God is only tied to your heart equals. It is an honest, true emotion, not some fluttering. I hate to say the NCSY-ish going up and down, these things which last for 5 minutes and then you don't have it anymore. Ella b'mida she'eda'eo, it really depends to what extent you know him. Im ma'at, ma'at, im harbe, harbe. A real emotion between you and God depends on how much you know him. Think about that and the women in your life, you'll understand it. Lefichach, it is therefore, Ramba writes, Chayav ha'adam, man is obliged, li'achet atzmo, to set himself aside, la'avin u'la'askil, to understand and to become informed, v'chachmot u'tfunot, in those disciplines, hamodiot lo et kono, which teach him about God as much as we know about it. That is the mitzvah of Avos Hashem, is based to learn, right? It's like to develop an acute thirst for God awareness and God knowledge. That is basically the mitzvah of Ava. What happens after the emotion itself, that is a natural reaction. If you really have learned him and known him, you're not commanded that. It's a nice way of saying you're commanded to date God, and he's a very good date. But date him. Once you'll date him, you'll be flood running after him. It's as simple as that. That's the lashon of the Rambam also in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, when the Rambam writes, Kishi Ketzir Aderech La'avos Avira, Sibishashi is bonin ha'adam b'ma'asav u'barav ha'niflaim ha'gdolim, etc. Miyad means intuitively, instinctively. U'ohev mefa'er mishabeach u'mitaveh tava gedola leidat Hashem hagadol. So the commanded is not the emotion, but what would naturally take to bring that emotion by deep thought out learning. I mean, not just reading, like you can read 100 books, that doesn't mean a thing. I mean, he's really contemplating. It's like a very serious state. Now, how will it take you to come to the conclusion that you can't live without the lady that's next to you? So, me, it took a year. What can I tell you? You know what I mean? It takes time. We're not talking about a teenage, hormonal reaction. Oh, I can't live living without you. Very nice for a song. It's got to be a real thing. That takes time. Okay, so that is the mitzvah of Avos Hashem. Take the time, do what it has to be to understand, learn in a deep way, and contemplate and think about it. This is the mitzvah. Now, the Rebbe goes on to explain in light of this idea of the mitzvah of thought. The mitzvah is actually, if you think of it, the first Rama in Shulchan Aruch. The first Rama in Shulchan Aruch brings the Gemara in Nevuchim and Chelik Beis that Shivise Hashem lenegdi samid klal gadol b'Torah. You put God in front of your eyes constantly, which is literally, that's what you're thinking about. So the Gra writes on the side, what's the makkah for this? He brings the pasuk of this week's Pasha Es Elokim Yisalech Noach. God, Noach walks constantly with God. It says, V'chein b'chanoich. The pasuk says also, V'yisalech chanoch im Elokim. V'chein ba'avais, as the pasuk says, Avosai she'yitalchu lefanav. That's the type. That is what we're commanded to do. Now, to what extent do we succeed? The Rambam himself says that it is rare to totally succeed of constant living with God awareness. But your job is not to succeed. Your job is to try. No one says you have to put the flag on top of the Everest. Wherever you put it, that's where you were supposed to go. But we have to try. In other words, these boots are made for walking, and that's what you have to do. You just start walking. What happens further really depends on your spiritual capabilities, your mental capabilities, And obviously there's a generation, the trials and tribulations you have. Not everybody is the same. I imagine that loving God in a world where there was no other, the only value was some kind of a godly reality. It's either Yud Kei Vav Kei or paganism. It was easier to see God in nature. Today, when we live in a world which is basically devoid of even thinking of even of natural design, of intelligent design, is frowned upon if you go to certain campuses. So it can be harder to see that. Every generation has its challenge. So wherever we get, that's what we're supposed to go. The mitzvah is to live with thought. That's the mitzvah. In light of this, we came and the Rebbe writes, and I don't know if you have the pages, you don't have the pages, so in page 398 of the Derech Mitzvah Secha, in the second paragraph, he started bringing the pasuk Re'ein natati lefanecha et hachayim v'et hamavet v'et hatov v'et hara. I'm summarizing. God is giving you life and he's giving you the opposite. He's giving you good and the opposite. And then it says b'charta b'chayim, and choose life. Now the question is, if that's the case, obviously if he gave me life and death, I'm going to choose life. What is the idea of you see life and you see death, now choose life? That seems to be obvious. So what does it mean? When we talk, after you understand that this is life versus death, I command you to choose life. Thank you very much. What does that mean? So he goes on and starts discussing the idea of the pasuk where it says, Abein Yakir Li Ephraim, we say this in Shemona Esrei of Rosh Hashanah, God, when he thinks about the Jews, his stomach churns. And obviously, as we learned, we discussed this with the Shalah, that obviously, yes, there is whatever we have in this world is an external miniature of something which really exists in the dynamics of God's interaction with creation. And if you have a stomach, it means to say there is a constant, conceptual stomach up there in heaven. We went further than that. We pointed out the Shalah writes, and we showed it, we lit the piece inside, that why is Hebrew called Lashon HaKodesh? Why is it called Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language? Well, different Rishonim have different takes on this. But this is what the Shalah writes. The Shalah writes that you must understand that all languages that we have are words that people decide how to describe natural phenomena. We look at a cup and I say, this is a cup. I look at a piece of paper and I say, this is the words I will say to describe this is paper. In Judaism, it's not that way. In Judaism, it works as follows. It says, for example, there's an eye. The word eye does not mean the human eye or the organic eye that you know. The word eye is three letters which describe the eye of God. What you would call the conceptual eye, the metaphysical eye, whatever that you would see it as an idea, as a nimshol. No, that's the mashal. That is not. We're not saying an eye is a human eye and God has something like the human eye. It's the flip side. The eye, just the words eye and yud describe the eye of God, and my eye is a nimshol, is a nimshol to the eye of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a way of looking at the world as nothing more than a parable and a metaphor to something which is very real. The idea behind this, we look at with the language of the root reality of the core of existence, and we look at existence as nothing more than a product of that core and of that root. That is the idea of Lashon HaKodesh. It's a language which is transcendent, because it's talking not about the tangible reality, but about the transcendent reality. That's exactly what this is. This is the idea of Lashon HaKodesh. So when we say that Einei Hashem, don't say ayin means my human eye or the organic eye, which is the conceptual eye, God, but that's not really what the word ayin means. The flip side is true. When you look at a person, you say, oh, yesh li yad. No, what does that mean? You have a tool which is similar to Yad Hashem. Yad means Yad Hashem. And the Gufa Adam, the pasuk says in Tehillim, I look at my body, I can see God, but I look at my body as nothing more than a flow chart, which somehow is a metaphor for the godly eye, the godly body, or whatever that would mean. Okay, obviously that has to be understood. That's a very, very important shalah. I don't want to sound terrible. Okay, I mean, you guys start learning Lashon HaKodesh. That's what it means. There's a mitzvah to learn Lashon HaKodesh in Sifri. That doesn't mean you have to know the modern day Hebrew of Ben Yehuda, because I doubt if the word machshev and midracha, I don't know, autobus is part of that. Okay, I'm talking about at least biblical Hebrew. Biblical Hebrew it's a mitzvah. It's a sifri v'shinanto levanecha. The one first mitzvah to teach the kid Lashon HaKodesh, where the Mishnah says mitzvah kala kivachamur. So the Rambam writes in Pirush HaMishnah, what's mitzvah kala? Limod Lashon HaKodesh. And we're learning here in English. What can you do? Eis lasis Hashem eferu teresecha. But this is that's what I do. But the Lamaisi, we should know that's how we should look at things. It's when you speak Lashon HaKodesh with that sense of awareness, you're living another world. You're simply living up there in the source and not at the symptoms at the derivatives. It's a whole different way of seeing things. Okay, it really changes everything. If you think Lashon HaKodesh, not just speak Lashon HaKodesh like a parrot. Anyway, so this is what it says. So when it says Hamu Me'ai Lo, it means to say there's Me'ayim Shel Mala. And my Me'ayim are nothing more than a nimshal of the primary Me'ayim, which is Me'ayim Shel Mala. What is the pshat in God's digestive system? So this is where we're up to. What does it mean when he says that our emotions are somehow expressed in the churning of our stomach? Have you ever had that? Well, the same thing. It all starts. This is all because that's what happens with God, and thus that's what happens to us. Everything has been flipped. The nimshal became a mashal. The mashal became a nimshal. This is what's happening here. So what does all this mean? So in order to understand that, we went to the piece of Seid Yishorim of Rav Gershon Heinrich Leiner, the Radziner Rebbe, on Erev Yom Kippurim. I do not know if the people have the material in front of them, so that's why I'm probably going to ask them. They're doing mostly oral today. And can anybody raise their hand or tell me who has something with the text in front of them? And show me anybody that does have the text. Oh, okay, Jonathan has a text. Most people don't, so we're stuck here with not what I usually like to do. So I'm going to have to, I'll read a bit and explain. So the idea behind this all started with the brach of Asher Yotzak. The Orach Chaim in Siman Vav, the Beis Yosef writes, what does it mean? Asher Yotzak, Adam b'chachma, uvar avai, etc. B'rfei chol basar u'mafli la'asot. And you do wonderful things, literally things which are stupendous. What does mafli la'asot mean? So he has quite a few interpretations. Some of them are very dated. One of them is because he still lives in the ancient idea of what air is. Every person is born with some kind of internal oxygen tank, and you're breathing essence, which is you. That is the idea. You probably know when it's Vayipach V'Apav Nishmas Chaim. You read that in Parshat Bereshit. And the Chazal say, Man de nafach midilei nafach. Whoever exhales, he's exhaling from within himself. And this is the source with the written in the Kabbalah that the neshama is a chelik elukam imal, because it's basically an expression of the ruach of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and the ruach is inherently part of what a Kadosh Baruch Hu is. This is based on the idea that you actually have an internal oxygen tank, which is basically you, and you're exhaling part of yourself. Well, by now we know that whatever you're exhaling previously was outside of you and you inhaled it. So that whole metaphor is not exact, doesn't really work anymore. You took something outside of yourself, processed it through your lungs, whatever happened, and you exhaled. So the idea of saying Vayipa Va'apav means this is very dated. Granted, well, the Torah was written in language of the people of the time, which is what Rambam explains, that the local Girgashi farmer would also understand. And the local Girgashi farmer didn't have modern day science. He didn't have any science. He basically was a primitive Canaanite And whatever was commonly accepted, that's the way it was described. Because God wanted every local, yokel, what can I tell you, to basically understand at that level. So I have no problems with the Chumash writing that way, but the problem is it went on further in generations. The Beis Yosef thinks the same thing. He thinks we're a bag full of air, and yet the body has so many holes. Now, if there's so many holes in the airbag, how come the air doesn't run away? So it says miraculously, God sustains the air in the body, and it doesn't run away, although there's so many holes. You have your mouth, your ears. He somehow thinks that all these holes go centrally to the receptacle of that air, and therefore, wow, how come the balloon hasn't deflated, and yet the balloon is not deflated? That's the Beis Yosef. Obviously, a very dated interpretation of Maflila. So the Rama brings the famous idea that means to say Shemaflila Asoba Mashu Shomer Ruach Adam B'Kirbo. The fact that he keeps the spirit of man within him, which means probably the soul, because and he ties a metaphysical entity with a material entity. What does he mean by that? So the Magen Avram and the Gra bring the Ari. It means to say that the soul stays in the body due to the food that we eat. What does that mean? It means when you eat, you're doing two things. You're first of all nurturing the body to be a receptacle for the soul. B, you're giving the soul a reason to stay in the body. Eating, when you eat, there's two things happening. You're serving the body and you're serving the soul. And let's understand what this means. And the Gra writes, and also I'll read the Magen Avram. The Magen Avram writes, Kavanot. Kavanot is the book of Kavanot HaAri, but written by Chaim Vital of the Kavanos of the Ari. That's the Iker Kisvei Ari, is called Sefer HaKavanot. The soul itself, it has its hana from the ruchnis, the spiritual dimension of food. And the guf is nana from the gashmis of the machal. Once again, here we're taking soul, and once again saying an inner dimension, an external dimension. And each part of you needs that nourishment. The soul needs nourishment of the spiritual dimension, specifically of food. And the body needs nourishment from the physical dimension of the food. Because of that, they're tied together. Every time you eat, I repeat, you're not just nurturing your body, you're also nurturing the relationship between the soul and the body. This was a Magen Avram and a Gra. To understand that, we went to that Ma'amar of the Shiur, the Gvalat Chelis, the Gesher Liner of the of Ishbitz of Redzin. And here I'm going to read it. He quotes a midrash. I'm going to read this midrash. And the Shema Zot, this soul, Kol Sha'ah, Shehi Ola V'Yered B'Guf. All the time, it's going up and down in the body. It's what we call it's fidgeting. Very Jewish, the soul. It's fidgeting. Jews fidget. Do you know the shpilkis in the zitzer? You know what I mean? What can I tell you? You get pins and needles. The soul is fidgeting. It doesn't want to be here. I mean, you think about the poor soul. The soul is an entity which is existence as at the highest level of profundity. It experiences God without any barriers. Marin the Blachman elaborates on this, how when the soul is freed of the bodily confinement, it has the capability of understanding things and enjoying that understanding in a way which is far beyond anything. And all of a sudden, they take this big Gulliver and put him down to the little world of the Lilliputs. And here he is. They take this great soul. It's like taking Einstein to become a kindergarten teacher. What's he going to do there? He's quite bored. Not just bored. He wants out. I can understand. Look, I'm a Ramba in yeshiva. I understand it. I will learn him. I want to learn. I got to teach these 18-year-old pumpkins. For goodness sakes. I'd rather teach mature human beings. Okay? They have some kind of a basis of information. Let be just by living life. You have a PhD in life, all of you. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm saying this is the neshama. The poor neshama comes down, This is Einstein or Aristotle in Athens. All of a sudden, he's down into 2023. He's got to teach third grade arithmetic. It's Rahmanus. So the Neshama wants out. It does not want to be here. Did you ever think of that? Your Neshama doesn't want to be here. Oliver, you read this, but they say Medrash and Tehillim, Perik Samach Beis. The Neshama is Oliver, you read this, but Chagupum Vakeshet, but Tzet Min Adam. And then the Midrash continues, V'ra'asha Kadosh Baruch Hu Melochel Haaretz Kvodo. But then it suddenly realized that God is found here, just as He's found up there at the highest echelons. Now that's a lecture which he never heard up there. That's an understanding of God, which is much profounder and broader and deeper than anything it had to Masifta the Rakia. This is frightening. I find God in the pits. Then he says, at that stage, he gets relaxed and says, okay, I'm going to stick around. This is interesting, like good old Livingston. He didn't leave. Okay, because he found a certain reality of humanity over there in Zimbabwe, near the falls, actually. That's where he was, that he didn't have in Europe. There are things that we learn about, for example, human nature. I don't know if you ever read this book by Dr. Yafa Eliach, Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust. It's my favorite read on Tisha B'Av. I do suggest it to all my students. And she describes episodes of happening in that terrible period, which people realize what life means. And you have this child, this lady, which is about to these people lighting Hanukkah candles in whatever it was, okay, and saying Shechianu. Now, when they say Shechianu, they mean it. Hey, let's be blunt. When you said Shechianu when you were a teenager, you just mumbled it. You get from 70 and up. I don't know if you're there yet. Shechianu, Bikimanu, Vihigianu, as Manazeh. Yeah, well, thank God. So far, I'm here. God didn't do the other pasuk of Yoneshli saying Shivim Shana, like he goes Chish Ufa, he cuts it and we fly. I'm actually still here. So that is, the older you get, you understand life in a profounder way. So there are realities that we find God. When you find humanity in the pits, you suddenly realize of the intensity and the beauty of what a human being can be. You understand what Salam Akim means, what Kabbalah Adam is, because you didn't see it in Scarsdale, you saw it in the ghetto, man. You saw beautiful expressions of human nature, of humans caring for humans and willing to live and die for humans in the worst places in history. And that's the idea of this. The Neshama suddenly realized that that's something it never knew. It was in the ivory tower of pure God awareness, with no trials and tribulations. All of a sudden, look how hard it is over here, but yet it's here. Which means to say there's a shiur given down here, which it would never get up there. And that's why it stays. So he says this is the reason why the Neshama stays, because it realizes this kvod shamayim b'tachtonim. You don't need elyonim. Adraba b'tachtonim, there's more kvod shamayim. This is a medrash in Tanchum and Pasha Shmini. That God created the world. The Avela Kadosh Baruch Hu had an obsessive desire. Liot lo mador b'tachtonim, that it should have a place of existence in lower echelons, lower levels of consciousness. Yes, that's us. We're there. We are there to find God in our lives, not it's very nice to know Malachim. As the Klutzker once said, Malachim and Strafim, he's got enough up there. He needs people down here. He came here to see people saying Kaddish, 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 and Baruch, not just the Malachim. For that, he didn't have to create a world. This is based on this medrash in Tehillim. So now he comes and says, I'm going to read the words if you don't mind. God spread out enormous enlightenment but it's engarmented in many metaphors, many external things. You look at science until you finally understand the laws of science behind it. And then the metaphysical properties behind that, that's a lot of levushim. There's a lot of things which are covering it. In other words, you don't naturally see the essence of things. You look at the external facade of things. And he says, to the extent God created a reality that you can actually deny God. Where's God? It's the same God which expressed himself in the levush, in the external garment, the way he expressed himself in the laws of nature. You now will say there is no God. There are only the laws of nature, and so on and so forth. You will look at creation, and one hand you have Tehillim exalting God through creation. You say that in Sukkot Zimra every day, and yet there's no question that many people will barely accept even they will call it the Big Bang Theory. And I said they won't even deny, they will deny intelligent design. To the extent it's run so such that because of that Orthodox Jewry somehow is afraid of evolution, will even will say it's fear. They won't simply know what's wrong. There's an evolutionary process through intelligent design. No, what they're afraid to go to a museum of natural history. It's a reaction to the world around us, which takes natural history and basically denies God with it. So we are very much in a defensive posture, and therefore many of us, not me, but there are, which will because of that walk away, turn their backs on science. They see as an opponent to religion, as opposed to what it's supposed to be, as brought down in Ramba, supposed to be the proponent of religion, the reason for being religious. Because you look at Shamayim, I say you look at the skies and creations, and you see the hand of intelligent design, God, okay? But that's the way it is. So this is what happens over here. God does give himself to the world in an enormous amount of levushim to the extent that you can even deny him. What happens is that the soul then is aware of this and does experience and can experience through human thought God in science. So that's a reason to stay here, because all of a sudden I've taken things which look like it's devoid of God and I found him there. Okay, so every person which looks at science and then says, oh, this is my Rabu Masecha Hashem, Kulam B'chachma Sisa Malaha Arts Kinyanaka, and means it. Okay, every person which will have a conversation of physics or of math or of anything, sciences, and realize that he's talking about Chachmas HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He is justifying his soul in his body. He is telling me that this levush is not a stira adirabah. This is the key for Gilui K'vodah Shemayim Ba'olam. For goodness sakes, this is the ethos of Torah Umada. For goodness sakes, I sound like Norman Lamb's according to the bracha, but it's the truth. It's also Ramba. What can I tell you? It's very much Rambam. The Rambam writes somewhere in the Bukham on the pasuk Haredi Noz Drachecha. I want to know your name. So show me the ways of how you interact with the world. Rambam writes somewhere in the book. He wanted a PhD in all the sciences. He's like a Shayal Leibowitz had 7 PhDs. He wanted more. And the Rambam says, and he gave it to him. He gave everything to him. He knew all the sciences, except for the peak of metaphysics with the Shar Hanun. He gave him Mem Tes Shari Chabina, which means he knew everything. Moshe Rabbeinu was our first rabbi doctor. And he didn't go to YU, would you believe it? Okay, he definitely didn't go to Sci Sims. He did the humanities and the sciences. Not like YU is it's a business school today. Everyone's doing Sci Sims. Who's learning humanities for cloud? I mean, the suckers. Sciences. You go to Queens. Why would you? You learn business. And you get to work by Goldman Sachs. You know what I mean? That's not the dream of Rambam. That's not what he thought about. That's something else. There's a German concept of Torah v'Parnasa. You know what I mean? This I understand. It's called Torah v'Derech Eretz, not called Torah Umada. Anyway, so he basically is telling us here that the idea is that the more we see God in our natural habitat, this world, this justifies the soul's wanting to stay in the body and not fidgeting. So if you want your soul, if you want to be more of a relaxed person, you got to learn, you have to know this, okay? This is the reality that we're talking about. And here he comes and says, I want to read the words. He says, when a person, by this awareness, he choseret laguf, the soul rests happily in the body, shemikivan shetotzi or mitocha ester, because it realizes it's redeeming enlightenment from those places which seem to be devoid of it, Esther, hidden light. It is more important to be here than be sitting basking in the glory of the God in the Sifta Derakia. Here, I'm discovering dimensions that is not available to me up there. There is no such thing as levushim up there. Here, I want to find God in the levushim. And here brings the famous pasuk in Yirmiyahu. People should know this. Im totzi yakar mizolel. It's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu says if you take greatness, endearing things out of things which are devoid of it. Rashi there says also the other Rishonim, if you introduce a person to covet Shemayim, a person which was a Rasha, and you made it into a tzaddik, now tzaddik doesn't mean a person which wears a gartel and dabbles like a windshield wiper in the store. Tzaddik means a person who lives in acute God awareness. If you take a person and literally, introduce them to godliness, what you will want will happen. So anybody wants a bracha, you don't have to go to a Baba who knows what, or I don't know what, everyone looks for brachas today. I got a great bracha. It's called this Rebbe called God. He doesn't wear a shrimer. What can we do? And he's not a weird, he's not, he's just a regular God. He's probably a litva. You know what I mean? And he says, I'm giving you a bracha. You don't have to go to Munkat Shibro Park. You simply might see Yokim Mizaylo, Kifitiya, what you want will happen. What can we be? But we don't believe in Yirmiyahu. We don't believe in God. We believe in wonder rabbis. That's once again a simon of this generation, right? Everyone's going to this one, to that one. It's a pasuk in Navi. It doesn't have to mean you become a Baal Tshuva worker, which is also important. It means you introduce people to truths. Or more so, according to the Rebbe, you introduce yourself to truths. You learn and actually now become a deeper understander of the world around you and see God. Might say you say, my Rabbi Masecha Hashem, this is Motzi Yakar Mizolel by yourself, in yourself. So this is an unbelievable thing, this quest of God awareness. And the more and more that grows, you have a bracha of a Kadosh Baruch Hu kafiti. That's not that bad. I'd suggest that instead of going to Miron or even going to the Kota. Learn noch a Blat Gemara, you know what I mean? Learn another Blat Gemara and see Chachmas Kadosh Baruch Hu. The big, I was, my granddaughter got married last week. So people came to me, they want a bracha. So you want a bracha? Learn. That's the bracha. You know what I mean? Noch a Taisvus, noch a Rashba. That's learned. That's the bracha of Kafitiya. Okay? Now this is the biggest bracha on earth. Sit and learn. It's in a body, so it can take things which are far and removed and bring them into godliness, into your awareness. Because we live in challenges, we're constantly learning more and more. But there's always, God's even here. It's unbelievable. About Shaita ben Tzvamala, but when it was up there in the upper echelons with the Malachim, the Srafim, Haita Omed, it was stagnant. Ki malachim nikreim omdim. Say pasuk in Navi, in Yecheskel, or Yeshayahu, they're called omdim because they're stagnant. She'ein lem kfitzim. They don't have, springs. They don't jump from place to place. They ain't going anywhere. That's why they only have 1 foot. Raglei yesharak. They have 1 foot. Is it 1 foot or is it 2 feet? No, Shemona Esrei. You stand with your feet together. Why? Because you want to be like a malach. There's a machlekes in Gemara. Do you stand with 2 feet together the way we do it? Or do we want to stand 1 foot in front of another foot, but together, literally toe to heel? Machlekes in Gemara. Halacha, we pass in 2 feet together. What's enough communion between those things? Why do we do that during Shemona Esrei? Because the mitzvah of Shemona Esrei is an exercise, and I am literally I am standing in front of God. Well, if you stand in front of God, you freeze. You ain't going anywhere. You're not asserting yourself. The word self becomes quite annulled. You feel pretty stupid even talking about yourself. That's why the Chaim Blachman said the Ikka Kavan in Shemona Esrei is thinking about, I need health, l'chvodo yisborach. I need wealth, l'chvodo yitbarach. I need a geula, l'chvodo yitbarach. I need everything, l'chvodo yitbarach. The Chaim Blachman says, if you don't think that, you're like this little dog saying, hoof, hoof, hoof. Aramaic, hav means give. Okay, have, give, you're barking. You must daven like you are doing this all in the service of God's agenda. Kvodei Shemayim. I want health, l'chvodei Shemayim. I want wealth, l'chvodei Shemayim. I want wisdom, l'chvodei Shemayim. Everything is l'chvodei Shemayim. Okay? So you have to understand that when you're standing in front of God, you're not going anywhere. You're not extending yourself. You're frozen. It's like, I remember how I used to feel when I stood in front of Rav Hutner. Frozen. You ain't going anywhere. So how do you express that? So one time it says you can actually take total self-annulment by putting the 2 feet together as if you only have 1 foot. 1 foot is for standing, not for walking. You can't walk with 1 foot. That's why you stand Shemona Esrei with 2 feet together as if it's 1 foot. I'm not going anywhere. I can't go anywhere. The other time it says, no, I don't think a human being can attain that, but he can have 1 foot of toe next to heel, saying, I'm not walking, but I can barely walk away from you. You know, try walking that way. You woggle, you barely go anywhere. It's good for short distances, not for much self-expression. The argument is, to what extent can you naturally feel? What can you normally attain in Shemona Esrei and you're standing in front of God? Can you totally annul the capability of self-expression? Or can you mute it, modify it, understanding I'm standing in front of God, compared to him, whatever I do is garnished. So my big thing that I'm doing is nothing. I'm not running anywhere. I'm not looking for independence. I'm with you. That's why those are the approaches there. Now, the idea behind this is that when you stand in Adam, a malach is called an omer. It's not going anywhere. It's not a vehicle of self-expression. A malach, by definition, is nothing more than a vehicle of God's expression. That's what a malach is. A malach has no name, as you know. The pasuk says, we read that, we will read that in Parshas Vayishlach at Rashi. Lama zeh sikra l'shmishal l'shmi, because the name of the malach is a shlichut. A malach is basically nothing more than a tool of God of expressing God. And therefore the name of the malach depends on its mission. So we have to know there's some malachim, we have constant missions, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, etc., because that's their mission. That's why they're called what they're called. It's not their name, their essence is their mission. That's what they have. So they only have 1 foot. They are called omdim. There's no self outside of the mission. Literally, this is shluchish adam kimoisei mamish. You know, it's not kimoisei, it's him. Okay? Shluchish adam hu ha-mishalech. That's what this is. That's an oimed. They're not growing. They're tools of God. God has nowhere to grow. Okay? The neshama is not there. When the neshama is up in the shemayim, it's the same thing. It's olam hagmul. Once you have done what you did, whatever you are, that's what you are. You're not going. There's no more growth. There's no self-expression in the neshama without a guf. Once you came down to this world, all of a sudden there's a sense of distance, a sense of darkness, and there's place for self-expression. It very much reminds me, you know, you people never had that. Okay, I had this, my Rebbe Rav Hutner, so I know what it's like. When you stand in front of your Rebbe, when he's really your Rebbe, you keep your mouth shut. You just don't, you don't, there's no self-expression. You're there to receive. You're not there to talk. You make yourself a kli. That's what a real Talmud is. It's not your sparring partner, okay? You're supposed to be a kli, not a mashpia, a makabel, period. A bittul. I know, I lived it very good for 6 years, so I know what it is. Okay? That's a kli. When you walk away from it, that's why the halacha is you can't be meira halacha b'makom rabbi. You can't be a mashpia b'makom when you're still supposed to be a makabel. The Gemara is the halacha says, I did the Torah lemiflat like bala. If you're busy giving out, you won't soak in. And a Talmud is a person which is boileya. He soaks things in. If you're busy being pilate, then you won't soak in. Then you're not a Talmud. So you're telling your Rebbe, it's enough. I had enough from you. Goodbye. That's called Meira Aloch B'fnei Rabbi. I hate to say what the Gemara says. The din is Yechayv Misa by Nadav Avua. More in the 6th parak of Eruvin. Masha'en came Shalei B'Malkam Rabbi. So here it depends. We're not going into halacha. There you can have some expression. Then you should be pilot because there's no more belief. So this is literally the neshama lamala and the neshama lamata. The neshama lamala is a kli for blia. When it comes, so to speak, in a world of hester panim, it's ki'ilu lei b'malkam rabbi. To see rabbi shalei b'malkam rabbi, wow, that's like frightening. That's the pshat is here I can grow and find rabbi shalei b'malkam. This is what he's talking about here. So the Rebbe writes. And the Shama Afim Korahi b'Malag Dolav Ra'ah b'Or Bahir Achen Sheina b'Guf Ein La'it Alut. It doesn't grow. She'i b'Bchinat Omeid Aval Kishu b'Guf Mekabel Tamid Hosafa v'Chadashot. And now he starts explaining, and this is what food is. V'zei Inyan Hamazon v'Achila. This is the idea of nutrition and eating. Shu kiyum nefesh adam. This is the kiyum of the nefesh of the adam, not just of the guf, but the nefesh of the adam. Shenichnas l'toch haguf, nit'ala nitkalel b'tzurat adam, la'amod ba'avodah nochach Hashem panim b'panim. It suddenly realizes that you're talking about all the energies found in the minerals of the earth, which afterwards transformed into the energies of the shrubbery that they grew out of that earth, and then afterwards was take those energies were not lost, but they were recycled and became energies of the animal which ate the shrubbery. You're looking at the animal literally as the energies of the minerals of the soil, which were transformed into the energies and minerals of the ground of the vegetation, which now are energies and energies of the animal. And now you took that and you ate it. What have you done? You've now transformed energy, which comes from soil, vegetation, animal, into human energies. And so what? Now you took those energies and you did avodas Hashem. You crossed the street with an old lady. You smiled to a person which needed a pat on the back. It's called mitzvahs after achad kamoicha gmilas chasadim. Okay, I'm not talking. You daven Shemona Esrei. You took those energies and translating the cute, which is Shemona Esrei, sense of total dependence on God, because that's what Shemona Esrei is. 18 benedictions of declarations of dependence on God. I need this. It's only from you. I need this. It's only from you. Think of Shemona Esrei as 18 declarations of total dependence on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what it is. So you've taken all the energies, which finally allowed you to be able to say that, because you're alive and kicking, you need to eat something. And you basically redeemed the soil, the vegetation, the animal, and you. Now the soul realizes this, wow, what the hell? The soul and the body can actually now transform and show me covered shamayim of the highest level of Amida Lifnei Ashchina, coming and deriving from a place that I thought is meaningless. What was it? It was soil. It was shrubbery. It was a cow. All that became human being, Homo sapien, specifically, because it has the intelligence and capability of thinking transcendent thought. I don't mean a Neanderthal. And therefore, that's Oimid Lifnei Hashem Panim Bepanim. You stand face to face with God. When do we stand face to face with God? That's what you're supposed to be doing, standing face to face with God. That's what it means. Your capability of doing that has just redeemed everything in the background. Think of that when you eat something. Think of that when you eat something. You are actually redeeming. Think of your own lives. Think of what it took in history for you to be who you are today, wherever you are. And everything good you do is redeeming and elevating all the chain of history that led to you. Do you understand? You are a part of a chain which when you shake, the whole freaking chain is shaking with you. I am giving life to my grandparents that were killed in the Auschwitz, wherever they were, by me living here in Eretz Yisrael and saying Dvar Hashem to you at this moment. I'm shaking the chain. I'm being mala, elevating or redeeming history. I'm redeeming history. I'm redeeming people. I'm redeeming time that was cut short and not lived. All that we're doing at this moment. You're doing it. That's what the Neshama B'Tach Guf does. It's capable of taking the whole reasons of the past and bringing it through the present into the future. It's a frightening, meaningful life. This is what this is really all about. Food. So that's the kind you can say, well, a human being was meaningful. Earth, grass, you eat, the animal eats, a cow. Yeah, that also you can redeem and bring up to where it is. When we say that the shulchan is a mizbeach, what does it mean? That you have to burn yourself on it? What does it mean the shulchan is a mizbeach? It means what you're doing is oile isherech nichoyach la'Hashem. That's what it means. Because you're redeeming all the energies that created whatever's on the table and bringing it up panim b'panim mul Hashem. That's what's happening when we eat. Think about it. And that's the reason I always tell the story when I was a young boy in Chevron Yeshiva. I didn't do what other people do, running to Rebelach and things like that. That wasn't my thing. But I always went every Friday night to a very special Rebbe called the Rebbe of Shemer Munim. He was the son of Reb Arla, of the original Reb Arla, Reb Aaron Ruta, the Shemer Munim. His name, he passed away like 5 years ago. I went there usually for 10 minutes and nothing more. I had a bechina every morning, Shabbos and Ramban al Torah with my Rebbe, so I didn't have much time to go for tissues. I had to you have to know all the Ramban al Torah, the parsha before I had my lunch. So I have a lot of mishmers on Friday nights. So I used to go there to see one thing, how he ate soup. So I wanted to see how he eats soup. It is unbelievable. I can tell you, this went for years. I was in Shiur for 10 years. The man ate soup, literally never bent his head to the plate, always 45-degree angle. Like that. Never bent his head to the plate, always brought the food up to him, straight. And then you literally have mamish. This is crazy. Excuse me, 90-degree angle. It's crazy. That's what he did. In that, I saw the idea of elevating food to me. I'm not going down to it. And I know that because I sometimes used to eat in restaurants and when I was in New York, and you see these people, their faces are stuck to the steak. You almost see like a steak on their face, you know what I mean? It's a and then here I saw a person which, no. It goes this way. That's what I used to go, those 10 minutes on Friday night. Believe me, it was worth it. Ada Yom Hazeh, this picture is in my head. That's the way. I don't do it. I'm a bad boy. About Taiva, like all the rest of us. You know what I mean? But I know that it can be done. And I know that's what should be done. So every Yom Kippur, at least do that. You know what I mean? At least try to elevate the food and not go down to it. This is the idea of eating. This is what you call Ruchnias HaMeichel. You know what Ruchnias HaMeichel is? You say, oh, the Ruchnias HaMeichel. Oh, you mean the holy sparks or something like that? No, it's not the holy sparks. Ruchnias HaMeichel is seeing Kvod Hashem, redeeming the God energies which are in all of nature, and bring it up to something into deep awareness. That gives the soul nutrition to be in the body. Okay, that's called ruchnius hamaychel. Your soul is here because it experiences that. That's what it means. That's the kind of a mystic, the holy sparks and the redeemed sparks. People have these cliches that they hear, but you understand what it means to redeem a spark. It means there's a spark of enlightenment there, but it flutters away. It has no basis. You have to catch it and make it into light. There are clues of enlightenment which endear us and allow us to use them to become enlightened. That's what these words mean. We told nitzot tzot, okay? When you hear these words with some of these people who read Hasidic literature, it sounds like they really don't know what they're talking about, but you say, oh yeah, wow. That's in English, that's what this means, okay? It means you take sparks of fire to finally accumulate a sense of enlightenment. It's enhancing your awareness. And this is what he says. So now I'm going to read a piece. עניין המזון והאכילה הוא קיום נפש האדם במה שנכנס לתוך הגוף, נתעלל להתקלל בצורת אדם. Those energies become incorporated in the overall gestalt of man. במה שנכנס לתוך הגוף, נתעלל להתקלל בצורת אדם, לעמוד בעבודה, נוכח השם יתברך פנים בפנים. It's everything I just said. וממילא, משום שנתקרב ממקום רחוק, יש בזה יקרות ואור גדול יותר. You've taken something which is devoid of that awareness and you made it into a tool of ultimate redemption. That's the importance of food. So now we know what food is. He then continues and says that the Zohar HaKodesh says that there are three types of food for the soul. This is a Zohar HaKodesh in Parshas B'Shalach in Daf Samach Aleph, and I'll read it to you. Kadmiso, originally, Kadnafki Yisomim Mitzrayim, when the Jews left Egypt, Alu Benama, the Ikre Yatir Mi'asra, Nama the Ikre Matzah. When they left Egypt, they moved from eating wheat and bread, leavened bread, into something which is unleavened, which is called matzah. That was their nourishment. Then it says, Ba'ashta Zachu Ba'alu, then they rose and were merited to eat Nama Achra, another bread, Eloy Yatir, which is much more celestial. Mi'ata Eloy, what is that? It's another bread. They graduated from leavened, unleavened, man. Chevraya, the Shtadla Ba'iraisa. The people who try to learn, it doesn't say they succeed, but they try to learn. I don't know, I got a few hours a day, I have whatever time I have, I can try to learn. Their soul is nourished from something much higher. Mahi, what does it nourish from? See, you can be mafli lasos with food, and there are different types of food, and he explains what it is. But the ultimate nourishment of the soul is not the matzah, is not the man min hashamayim. It's a chokhmat techayeh ba'ala. It's going directly to God awareness. And he explains what a raisa means. I'm just going to read that. He says, you know what a raisa is? He says, בהשפעת החוכמה תחיה בעליה, אין בו שום פסולת, אלא אף מהפכת, כל מה שנראה בעולם הזה פסולת, ומכוח החוכמה יתהפך לטוב. ויתברר שהוא ברצון השם בלי שום נטייה, and here I will explain. He says if you really learn Torah, Torah doesn't just mean learning, Babakamba, Mtsira, Basu, which is very important. It means taking all that and realizing that there isn't anything which is Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The ultimate Chachma is understanding Yediyas Elokim, that the Chachma Shemachayeh Ba'aleh. You suddenly realize there's really no, as he says, you suddenly realize at the end of the day, Hakol B'dei Shamayim, Afilu Yirat Shamayim. God gave us a sense of awareness that we're independent. Within that sense of awareness of independence, we have challenges, we have sakhar, we have urge. It's all a creative form of thinking. Objectively, you're not independent. All your term mitzvahs lie, and your pure lies in a certain form of understanding, which is your natural understanding that I am independent, I can choose to come close, I can choose to go far. That also is a created sense of thinking. But in all truth, as he says very strongly, in truth, not negate your avodah. In truth, hakol b'nei shamayim, afilu yirat shamayim. You're never away. You're always tied to the hip. There's no you. You are nothing more than an expression of his living will. But that takes all life and more to somehow begin to understand that. Because it would be totally destroy your sense of self. You couldn't function. God doesn't want that. He wants you to live with a sense of awareness of independence and yet understand that, although you'll never totally internalize that. It's like living with a sense I am nothing more than an expression of God's will and will. That would totally psychologically devastate you. You wouldn't be creative, you wouldn't function. So you can't put it here, but it should be here or here or here, wherever it's going to be. It's got to linger in your mind. A certain challenge to your sense of self, because you're much more than the word self. That's something not easy to swallow, but this is what it means, a chokhmah techayeh ba'aleh. The acute sense of, in all truth, that everything is good. The Zohar writes that a person who says Kriyat Shema, it perfumes his life. It's a beautiful Gemara. I'll tell you the Zohar. It's a mishpat. I remember teaching it in 88. That was in YU. I think it was 87 or 88. The first time I went to do recruiting for KBY. So it was Shabbos Parshas Vayakov. Well, this goes back a while ago. 88 or 89, one of the two. Shabbos Parshas Vayakov. I still remember we had a Shabbaton in YU, and I spoke over there. I know guys that afterwards are connected to me since then. You know, wherever they are in life, that's something else. But that was a very momentous Shabbos. It's the first time I broke out of my cocoon and decided to talk in public. Okay, it wasn't easy that I remember. So I think I still have the notes of that Shabbos, okay, which I wrote afterwards. So the Zohar says that Rav Amnuna Saba had a young child called the Yenuka. Okay, so one day some Tanoim, I don't remember the names at the moment, passed by, and they passed near the house, and I think Rabbi Shiur was one of them. They went to be Oisik and Pidyon Shvuyim, so they passed by his house. So the mother's hanging her laundry. She tells the kid, go get a bracha from them. He looks and says, nah, they didn't say Kriyat Shema today. So they said, how do you know they didn't say Kriyat Shema today? Because if you would have said Kriyat Shema today, you would have smelled like perfumed people. You don't smell like you said Kriyat Shema today. They said, you're right, we were Isaac Pidyon Shvuyim, and we didn't say Kriyat Shema. So it says, don't come near me. So they waved the brachas from far. The kid said, I don't want to be here with you. This is a piece of Zohar, it's an unbelievable piece of Zohar. What does it mean? The Kriyat Shema perfumes your life. Because when you said Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, it doesn't mean that he is one God, he doesn't have an extended family on the Olympus. It doesn't mean there's not a pantheon of gods. No, that's not what it means. It means you're one and not of numbers. One is a categorization of fragments. You are total oneness. There's no fragmentation in God. It's a mathematical point, which doesn't exist outside of theory. If you're totally one, if anybody dams a nusaf eidot mizrach, antu chad v'lo b'chushban. You're one, but not the one of numbers. It's a pasach eliyo. Echad means that. Echad v'lo b'cheshbon. You're in pure oneness. Equals whatever exists is nothing more than an expression of that oneness. You just said that everything is nothing more than an expression of that oneness. Because if there's you and God, so he's not the one of, he's already the one of numbers. He's not perfectly one because there's something else. Perfect oneness equals there's no duality, there's no two. When you say echad means ata echad mushlam v'lo shel cheshbon. There's no end or beginning to you equals there's nothing outside of you. And everything is nothing more than that. Take that in your pipe and smoke it, and you realize that everything else is nothing more than that. Ultimately, whatever happens in life, yeah, that's part of godliness in one way or the other. So somebody perfumes your life. It gives a good smell even to things that don't smell that good. And the Rebbe brings the story of Yaakov Avinu coming to Yitzchak wearing goat skins which smell. And it smelled like an Eden. Rashi writes that there's nothing that smells worse than goat skins, and yet this sounded beautiful. It's very sweet of God to make, to do a deodorant. Why didn't Rivka wash the skins? What does that medrash mean? It means that Yaakov Avinu is a man who lives beyond fragmentation. I'm not going to that, it's another topic to talk about. He lives a world of wholesomeness of one. That's why under his head, all the fragmentations of stone become one. That's a Maharal in Gurari and Parshat Vayetze. In his mind, he doesn't experience fragmentation, he experiences the oneness of reality. Whatever he sees, I don't know, this. He sees the expression of the infinite God. Doesn't see anything else. Can't do much business with this one. You know what I mean? That's it. So for him, everything smells good. That's what the soul can accomplish in this world. That's the Chochmah Mechayes Ba'alel. So now we've learned what food is. The next stage is try to understand, what does it mean that we have food which is developed, which is internalized in the body, and food, part of the food, which is expelled from the body. This is the next stage we have to understand. We now know the meaning of food. We know the avodah of feeding, how you have to literally elevate the soup to you, not to come down to it. Now the question is, so what, that is the nimshal of what we're talking about. So I look at my body and I internalize food, and because that my soul is in it, yet there's parts of the food which are not incorporated in the body. They're not Oymid Neichach Hashem. What is that? What does it mean that the part of food, at the best, can become manure? You know what I mean? That's the best it can do. So obviously there's this Pnimius HaMeichel and there's Chitzonius HaMeichel. And the Pnimius HaMeichel is everything we spoke about, which ties the soul to the body and justifies existence. And there's Chitzonius HaMeichel. And your only question is, what are you looking for? Are you looking for Pnimius HaMeichel? Or are you looking for Chitzonius HaMeichel? Are you looking for the external materialism, which is really not connecting to the God, but Adarabah, celebrating the devoidness of God awareness? Because it cannot be raised up. There's no reason for the soul to want to experience that. That's its challenge. Or are you looking for Pnimius HaMeichel? You see a coconut on a tree. Now, before the first monkey threw it down and it cracked, you were sure that was a softball tree. Then the first monkey threw the coconut down the crack, and wow, there's a great refreshing drink in there, and there's a lot of good fruit. To what extent are you living with the hammer which cracks the coconut of this world? That's Pneumius Samaichel. Or to what extent don't you just want to play softball? That's Chitzonius Samaichel. This is the challenge that we have. And this, I guess, we're going to have to do next week. This is the real name of the game. Do you want to live a world which is preserving your comfort zone? You're religious, but you don't want to live with an acute sense of awareness of God's existence and truth. You don't want to feel nothing more than an expression of an infinite, pure God. Or do you want a God cut down to your size, which will serve your psychological needs? And it'll be just what you need. You know, I need God during a Shiva call. I need God in tragedy. I need God to make me feel good. I need God. So I need a God which I can cut and paste to size and ultimately feel good about myself. I need God for Yisker. Do you notice? I need God for Yisker. I need the God with the plaques and the shows with the lights, you know, on Yom Kippur. That we need God for. Do you also need God when you're in, I don't know, Prime Grill? No, there I need the waiting. That's the question. That's the difference between religion and paganism, my friend. You want a God cut to your palate to preserve your comfort zone, and you have a psychological necessity to, I need a God. Everyone needs a God. I said, hey, well, I'm Jewish. I need a God. You know, it's Heimish. You know what I mean? I need guys. I want to say I live a meaningful life, so there should be a God. You know, thank God for God. So at least, you know, he serves us well. Or is a God there which you annul yourself in front of him because you realize that everything is nothing more than a created form of his women will? It's not a pleasant. It's a God which demands upon the flesh. This is Shylock per excellence. He hardly leaves you the pound of flesh. He wants all of you. That we have to talk about next time around, okay? And this will come back to what it means. You just think for 2 minutes, now that you understand the metaphor, Baal Peor was paganism. What was the service of Baal Peor? Defecation. Chitzonius Samaichel. Not Pneumius Samaichel. I only want Chitzonius Samaichel. Not interested in Pneumius Samaichel. God, I need you for material life. I don't want the food for its metaphoria of its metaphysical properties. That's Baal Peor. I want the coconut for a softball. Do me a favor, tell the monkey to stop dropping them. I don't want to know about the other stuff. Yeah, that's the idea of the opposite. This person cannot really say person whose face is in the plate, as opposed to that Rebbe which picked it up like this, 90-degree angle. He's the person which is a Baal Peor Jew. He celebrates that part of the Gashmias which cannot be miskalo panim bepanim mula kadosh baruch hu ba'avodah. That's a profound thought. That's Baal Peor. It's most of us, if not all of our societies. Some might say, oh, Baal Peor, some weird avodah zarah. What are you talking about? It's ultimate orthodoxy. It's, you know, Chitzonius Samaichel. And the Pneumius Samaichel becomes like a little ornamentation on the cake. The cake is chitzonius hamaychel. Abyssal Judaism is that's just the ornamentation. And the truth is that those who are not pagans in their minds, the opposite is true. The Ikar Michael is Ruchnius Michael, Pneumius Michael. Eat for nutrition, because nutrition will give you the capability of doing everything, bringing everything to its reason. As soon as you eat not for nutrition, but you eat because it looks good, you just blew it. It's a different way of thinking. Okay, guys, it's a pleasure learning with you today. See you in 2 weeks. Goodbye. We will continue this. That'll be the end. Okay, right. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good. Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever we are. Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank
Okay.
Thank you, Rebbe.
My pleasure.